We're still a relatively new agency. We started our public operations from the 1st of January 2015. We're a business unit within Department of Justice and Regulation, like the Community Crime Prevention Unit, and our function is to release crime statistics and to make information available. We also have a research and evaluation function, but primarily we're here to try and make information easier to obtain. We were created to restore public confidence in our recorded crime statistics. We aim to develop a suite of products to inform about various aspects of recorded crime and crime and justice issues. As I mentioned, we're trying to make information easier to access, and we're trying to build an evidence base that can be used for all kinds of different people, policymakers, researchers, people working in applied fields, yourselves in councils and local government, and also to support statistical literacy, which is basically just helping everyone use our data better and understand what it means. So, as I mentioned, we're new, but what we've been doing since we spoke to you last, we've got a revised crime tool on our website, so you can go and look at what's going on in your local government area. It's actually just been updated this morning, so it's a lot prettier than it used to be and hopefully easier to use. You can let us know. We include a lot of explanatory information on our website, so if you're just not sure about what kinds of different pieces of information you might be looking for, you can find a lot of that information on our site. We put a release calendar on there so you can know when new data will be available. We tell you about the agency, and most importantly, as of today, we release our quarterly crime stats. So it's all on our website. As I mentioned, we do regular releases of data. We do this quarterly. We're really keen that there's no surprises for anyone about when data becomes available. We advertise them well in advance. As I mentioned, we've got a release calendar on our website, so if you need to be planning when you're going to get information, when it's going to be available, it's all there for you. We work 3 months behind. So our December quarter figures get released in March, our March quarter figures get released in June, etc., etc. And our big annual report gets released in September, which has the most amount of information in it. So our website looks a little bit like this. This is last quarter's information because it's just been updated this morning. But essentially, you can find a lot of information here already if you're looking for general LGA postcode level data. So we've got a crime tool, as I mentioned. This is the old version. It's a lot prettier as of this morning. But you can go and compare, see what some of the issues might be by offence for your particular area. You can drill down into it to an extent as well. And you can see the last few years' worth of data. So you can get a good overview just self-serving on the website. We've got a dashboard, again, much prettier. I encourage you to check it out. And it provides you some of the top 5 offences for your area. It'll show you what the most recent trends have been. And again, you can drill down to some more detailed data. And here's an example of how far that goes. So on the website, you can go down to a fair level of detail for particular offences, and this can be a really good place to start if you're trying to work out what some of those issues might be in your area from a recorded crime perspective, which can be quite different to what maybe community perception might be, so it can be helpful in testing some of those issues that you're getting reported to you. So I might hand over to Brad in a second to talk a bit more about our service offering, the sorts of things that we can do to help you. We've got our role of direct data supply. As I mentioned, we release all the information to the public through our regular statistical releases, but we also do a range of customised data supplies and consultancies, and to be honest, for your grants, this is probably where most of you will need to go at some point to really get to your local issue. We also do have a research and evaluation team, and we're really happy to provide advice. So some of the issues that Chris was talking about planning a project, trying to work out what kinds of information you might need, when you might need to seek them, by all means, come and have a chat to us. We're happy to try and give some advice and help you maybe get your thoughts in the right order about what you might need to do.
My team is effectively responsible for any of the customised data requests that come through to the agency. And I've just provided 3 kind of very brief examples of some of the different ways that we can cut the data depending on the level of complexity that you require, and also just to give you an overview of what we can do with the data. So just to give you a very brief overview first though, we've also obviously the LGA and postcode data on the website, as Fiona already mentioned. Once we get below that level, we have issues around confidentiality and some quality issues with some of the variables that we collect. However, we can advise you about what is appropriate to use and what's not based on our understanding of the data. We have the ability in some cases to be able to create specific cuts of the data for specific streets and locations and things depending on the types of information you're looking for to support your grants. But at the end of the day, the best thing for you to do is to give us a ring and have a chat to us generally about the problem, what you're trying to find out and what sort of data you think you might need, and we can help guide you through the process. And it's very important, that last point, we get lots and lots of data requests, so the sooner you get to us, the sooner we'll be able to work on the project for you. So the first example I've got here is effectively getting general crime trends. So if you're looking at offences that occur in a postcode, suburb, streets, usually fairly straightforward for us to pull together. Full streets are better, so for example, St Kilda Road. I know it's a big street, but you know, those sort of things, Fitzroy Street, anything where we've got a start and an end point, it's easy for us to pull that data out. Suburbs, again, is quite easy. Not yet on our website. I'm hopeful that we'll be getting it up there on our crime tool in the next few weeks, so that will be available as per standard with the postcodes. But we can also break down the data by offence categories or by location types. So we've got geographical locations, but we also have locations like residential locations, community locations, which may include public transport, train stations, on trains, trams, things like that, and other locations, which could be a whole range of things. But we can advise you about what's included and excluded in some of those categories. These are fairly straightforward for us. The general rule with our requests is if they take us 2 hours or less, we won't charge you for them. If it takes longer than 2 hours or it's a more complex request, we have a basic cost recovery fee process that we can talk to you about, and we can tailor it. So, you know, if funding is an issue, let us know and we can tailor the request to meet your needs. So here's one example that I've just pulled out that we did for Drysdale. So this was some data that they requested from us, just breaking down particularly the suburb of Drysdale, recorded by the types of offences that they were looking at in the area. And as you can see, that was actually a fairly straightforward request from us. If that's something you're interested in, let us know. That's very straightforward. The second example is when you're looking for crime occurring in a specific location. So as I mentioned before, we've got information about train stations. We have information about other community areas. So if you've got retail locations, things like that, we can pull that out of the data. We can break those down into offences, but sometimes it requires a little bit more work for us to get that information out. Depending on the size of the location will depend, of course, on whether we have to charge for it. So this is another example where we had some data that was required by some streets in Horsham. This was actually fairly straightforward because it was full streets. There were 4 street locations that were required. It did take us a little bit more time because we have to code that data in manually, but again, this is a fairly straightforward way of doing it. I'll get to the next example in a minute, which is a little bit more complicated, but basically where you are able to provide us with information about the exact locations around where you're looking to get information for, that's the best way for us to look at the data. So even if you've got Melways references, that can be helpful. Location types, as I mentioned, train stations or a particular retail area, a shopping complex, any extra information that you can provide us about the space will help us tailor the data to best suit the needs. And so the third one, this is the one that my team will hate me saying we can do because this is the stuff that requires a fair bit of work on our front. But to be honest, some of the requests that we've done that have broken down into very specific areas have been very useful at showing difference in crime across smaller locations and hotspots within a suburb, which can be quite useful at times. So one example is maybe a new estate. You've got an estate area and you want to measure whether there's been an increase or decrease in recorded crime in a particular location which is flanked by certain streets in your area. We have to also include the internal streets, so that takes a little bit more time, but we can do it. So this is an example of one that we provided for the Dallas shopping centre area last year. So as you can see on the map in the bottom, there's a few streets that kind of sit around that shopping centre area, And with some clarification with the data or the client, we were effectively able to break down the data just for that specific area, including only the street numbers on one side of the road as opposed to the other, and provide some information that showed a little bit more detail for that specific location. We actually did another one last year as well, which was looking at smaller locations within a suburb to look at whether there was an increase or decrease in crime in particular thoroughfare areas. So looking to see whether there was any relationship between people going to a supermarket and then walking through an estate, and whether property damage offences were maybe related to people migrating across from these different areas. So, like I said, the opportunities and options that we have are quite big. But really, again, I would encourage you to get in touch with us and talk to us about what you want to do, because that will mean that we can tailor any of the solutions that you might need for your grants, will be as effective as possible.
Probably the other thing we want to touch on is, and I mentioned it briefly before, sure, we provide data, we're absolutely happy to help you talk about that, but we're also happy to help you work through the approach that you want to take to using information. We're happy to sit down and talk to you right from the beginning of, we've got a problem, we think it's about this, we think it might be in this area or involving this group of people, or whatever you're trying to focus in on, and we can try and help you plan out what you might need for that. And from our point of view, that's not just for the initial grant. That's not just proving to Chris and his team if we think we've got a problem, we think we want to do this. It's also really key if you're trying to then evaluate the impact of what you need to do, which is something that's really important for this kind of program, particularly if you're trying to build on some of the innovations you might be putting in, or expand programs in the future. You really need to be able to show the effectiveness of what you've been able to do. So for us, it's really important that not only have you got that evidence up front, but you've also got that evidence at the end, so that you can go back and measure against some baseline data and make sure you can make your case for the future. So by all means, feel free to talk to us about that as well, and we are always happy to talk at any point in the process. So don't feel like you have to have a complete research plan, a complete evaluation plan. Just come and talk to us, and please don't talk to us the day before it's due. That's the main fundamental message, because we don't want to let anyone down. There has been, I think, a little bit of confusion sometimes about who to go to for what, because we've got some information and VicPol have got some information. So we thought it might be useful just to summarise it so you've got it as a reference. So essentially, come to us if you need those official recorded crime stats. You need some hard figures. You want to know about crime trends in your area or over time, or both. If you want to know about offences, about incidents, about victims. If you're interested, probably less relevant the family incidents for this kind of project, but you never know. That's what we do. So come and talk to us. We can sort you out for all your numbers needs. However, if you want more qualitative information, if you want to know about what kinds of things police are attending, you want to know some of the operational information, how many call-outs they might be getting around a particular peak area, if you want those supporting statements saying, yes, we think there's a problem, and yes, we think this would be useful, or if you want to know about a specific incident, you need to go to VicPol. That's not something we can help you with. We deal in the aggregate. They deal at the unit record level. So hopefully that helps give you a bit of a guidance, but if in doubt, always just flick us an email or give us a bell. So we've included all our details. As I say, feel free to run through our website first. It's often a good idea to get just a bit of a general feel for what's happening in your area, but we're really happy to chat to you about whatever you need to do.